It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody. It's the Locked On Eagles podcast. Louis DiBiase joining you as always. I'm finally back. I am recovered from no surgery, so now I can talk. I will not sound like Squidward the entire show. Very, very happy to be back. And as always, with my co-host Gino Camilleri, who held down the fort today this week with 3 awesome shows. Gino, man, what's up? I'm glad to be back, and let's get back to talking some birds. I've been pent up up here in Buffalo. I haven't been able to get my Eagles thoughts out for an entire week. I mean, it's been terrible.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking into a microphone most of the time. It kind of stinks not to have you on the other side kind of checking me or bringing another perspective to it. But I am lucky enough that, funny enough, the kid who sits directly behind me at work is an Eagles fan. We had a very interesting conversation. A couple Bills fans. One quote that Eagles fans will find very funny is that they said that Cole Beasley is still one of the best slot wide receivers in the NFL, which I thought was absolute blasphemy with as many good slot wide receivers as there are in the league. So that's just some of the crazy talk that we have to listen to up here in Buffalo. But we're focused on a much better team than the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's what we're getting down to here, Lou.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a fun show today to wrap up the week. We're going to get into some in the clutch questions. Eagles Instagram is a very interesting place. It's not like serious analysis. I mean, Instagram, you know what Instagram is. You know, it's all picture based, but it's kind of cool. Like, there's always these like fun games and like different questions that these fans pose on Eagles Instagram, and I'm just scrolling through on the search tab, which is kind of like, you know, YouTube with like recommended videos. You just fall into this black hole of content, and you just can't get out of it. And I stumbled upon a question an Eagles fan posed that I wanted to talk about with you on the show today, and it's: you're down by 4 with 3 seconds left. You're at the opposing 20-yard line. Who are you throwing to if you're Carson Wentz? We're going to get into that. I created a couple in the clutch questions myself on the defensive side of the ball as well. But before we get into that, as I was prepping for the show, about an hour ago, Pro Football Talk tweeted out the NFL proposed a rule to the NFLPA that would expand the season to 18 games, but with a 16-game player limit. So Carson Wentz, 18 games in the season, we're seeing Nate Sudfeld / Clayton Thorson / Cody Kessler for at least 2 of those games. You're going to be without Jason Kelce for 2 games. You're going to be without Malcolm Jenkins, without Fletcher Cox. I have a lot of thoughts on this that we'll get into. Gino, I want to get your initial reactions as this news breaks. And then, too, I want to get into if the players are going to actually consider this. I'm kind of nervous that maybe there's an opening where they would do it. But first, what are your initial thoughts on this rule change proposed to the NFLPA by the owners?
I thought it was incredibly stupid, and my instant analysis was that you're going to get 2 weeks of pure preseason football, and
that's
not even just pure preseason football. You're going to be relying on guys that your starters are going to be out. You're going to have your backups, and who's going to be the backups to them? I mean, you're going to have to change the size of the rosters if you're going to want to do that. You're going to have to limit the amount or increase the amount of guys you can have on your practice squad. Are you going to have a punter and a kicker and a long snapper that you're going to need to have 2 of? It just seems ridiculous in my eyes. Why not just make a spring developmental league that is supported by the NFL to get these guys playing time if you want to get them on the field? It doesn't make any sense to me to do that, because what's the best way to promote a league? It's to have your stars on the field. Why would you take them off of the field? Yes, people want to see more games, but honestly, it's December, and you're going to have guys that you're going to say, oh, Carson Wentz, he's only got 1 game left, and we have 3 games left in the season. What are we going to do? I don't ever want to be in that scenario, and I think it would just create pure anarchy in the league, and I don't believe it is the best business decision for the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, everybody would have that same problem, but for me, it's just like, you're never going to be at max strength. No team is going to be at max strength throughout the season, right? Because you might be changing up. You're going to be like, all right, we'll go with Wentz and Kelce this week. We'll sit Jason Peters and Fletcher Cox. Like, listen, the strategy would be very interesting for coaches. When do you sit certain positions based on opponent strengths, based on if other important positions have already sat a few games, like if you're saying, okay, we've already gotten 2 games out of Fletcher Cox, now we can sit Malik Jackson. I mean, like opponents, if they sit a bunch of their players, are you going to do that? Or are you going to go max out balls to the wall and start everybody in an easy win? It's like the strategy would be very interesting. It'd be the Wild West for sure. For me, though, this screams money grab that sacrifices entertainment value over the course of the season because you're going to have teams either at max strength, basically never, or you're going to have essentially, like you said, 2 full-blown preseason games where teams punt away basically 2 games and say, we're just going to go, full max in a 16-game season. And it's like, I mean, for me, it doesn't really make it that much more fun. You're not promoting your stars, like you said. Like the NBA is doing so well at now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more so, hey,
like how can you look at the NBA and see what's going on there in free agency, and even think that, hey, let's toss. I mean, Nate Sudfeld is a decent backup quarterback, but look at some of these quarterbacks around the league. You can't even get 32 competent NFL starters on the field at any given time, and now you're going to say that you have to take them off of the field for 2 games? Get out of here. That's just, I do not take any interest in that. I love watching the preseason for a reason, because it's a competition. These guys are battling it out. I don't want to see those same players that, hey, they're just fringe NFL players, fringe roster guys, competing in meaningful minutes down the stretch. I do not ever want to see that.
Yeah, and they're going in the opposite direction of the NBA because you're not really promoting the players. It's, again, more so. And I don't need, look, if there's going to be 18 games, like, sweet, and that's awesome. But you got to have the actual, I mean, if the players are okay with that health-wise, pertaining to the risks, if you're gonna get rid of 2 preseason games, then absolutely. But you're expanding the season for the revenue, but you're not making it very enticing for the fans. I guess where here this could be accepted by the NFLPA is that, it's a big plus for backups around the league now. Mm-hmm. Now you look at a team like the Eagles, depth would be a huge advantage currently. So it's going to make guys like Steven Wisniewski. That guy's going to get way more money than he did in free agency. Like the Eagles aren't going to be able to get all these value signings of a Zach Brown, of, their cornerback position right now it's an incredible problem to have if it's in this scenario, because you can only start a guy 16 games out of 18. So I guess it incentivizes the backups because they're going to make more money on the open market. And that's where I'm like, oh, man, do the players actually consider this? Because, I mean, what is the negative ramifications for the players here? I know there's a bunch for the fans and for the team itself when it comes to, contending for the playoffs. Do you think there's a negative downside for the players that's instantly going to have them slap this down? Because the NFL's already proposed it. Now it's up to the NFLPA.
It's going to take so many different factors. Like, what is the TV deals going to come out of this? I'm sure there's going to be a huge one if you're going to add 2 additional games on there. Where are you going to structure them? Are they going to be in the beginning of the season? Are you going to move the Super Bowl back a week? How is that going to work? Why not just have a fall league for the bottom 30 guys on your roster, expand the roster about 15 spots, you take your 30 to 40 guys at the bottom and let them play 4 to 6 extra games to get those reps.
Well, I think they're trying to save. They're basically trying to grab as much revenue as possible in a typical NFL way by limiting their costs as much as possible, by not increasing. Like, I feel like I saw an Eagles beat writer actually say this on Twitter, that this rule proposal is essentially you're trying to extend your revenue and create a longer season, but without having them have there being a 16-game player limit that is now essentially expanding the roster to, say, 65 players and increasing your team spending. Yeah,
I see that, but at the same time, now do you increase the cap space? These players are going to want guaranteed money. These playtime incentives, is that going to come into it as well? There's so many different things as it stands that are going to come into play for this. If you're going to make it an 18-game season, make it an 18-game season. If the NFL players are going to sign up for it, I think they would much rather expect to play 18 games rather than, hey, when am I going to play 16 games? Because then you get into it, it's like, Now, do you not play your running back the first 2 weeks of the season, then let him get hot 16 games down the stretch? What do you do? There's so much strategy that comes into play with it, and I just think it's going to create too many mismatches and too many games that are just lopsided because you see these last few games of the season when these stud teams are just putting their guys on the bench, and the team that didn't have a chance, nobody thought would have a chance coming into that week, ends up winning. So say it's like Miami against the Patriots week 16. It's going to be like that for 3 more additional weeks. Who wants that? We don't even want to watch these preseason games for what it is. What makes you want the Dolphins, who are 13 games behind the Patriots, who wants to watch that game week 17 or 18? Not I. I know the NFL wants the revenue, but I think there are several different outlets that they could go down. Why not in the dead period have a league that is run based on these players? Like, if you're going to have to expand the roster one way or another. You can't field 53 guys for an 18-game season rather, and expect the same amount of guys to make it through the year. I just think it's crazy. You'd have to go to at least 60 to 65 guys, which is just going to bring up your increased spending, which you're going to get more revenue, and I think it's just going to all even out in the end. The only thing that's really going to matter is a big TV deal, and they're going to get that one way or another, whether they expand to 18 games or whether they stay at 16.
I'm just nervous that, like, for the players, there's not enough negatives. Like, that impacts for sure.
Yeah, I believe the players will be on the side of that for sure. I agree.
Which is like, and since the rule has already been proposed, it's like, man, I'm kind of nervous that this might actually happen. I wish we, let me tell you, with this rule, wish we still had Nick Foles. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no shit, man. Like, so many things come into play now. Like, how he's planning for 2 to 3 years down the road. Now that's going to change up his entire game plan. Like, I don't get it. This one is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it, and if you guys out there have anything you think the players might have a mindset of, okay, this isn't really good for us, let us know, because for me right now, I'm trying to think, and I don't know, this could happen. We'll keep an eye on it. The NFL has officially proposed it to the NFLPA. We'll see. I mean, if I'm Carson Wentz, I'm going to be pretty pissed off when you're rolling and it's, week 12.
Exactly. That's another thing. Like,
right.
The momentum is another thing to it.
Yeah,
like, when you're winning 5-6 games in a row, you don't want to have to pull your star quarterback. You don't want to have to pull Alshon Jeffrey. You don't want to have to pull Malcolm Jenkins. That just is ridiculous.
Well, especially for a guy like Wentz, who this year, I mean, it's supposed to be Redemption Tour 2.0, and, like, he's getting going. The Eagles are in a 2017 similar situation. Like, he's gearing up for the playoffs. And then you pull him and totally take him out of maybe this potential hot streak that wins him an MVP this year, per se, just in this hypothetical scenario. And boom, I mean, that you got to imagine won't sit very well with Carson Wentz. So there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of different elements to this. It's such a complex thing that, right now it is proposed, though, and we'll see. It would definitely make for an interesting talking point later on.
Before we finish this real quick, Lou.
Yeah.
Just look at the 2018 Eagles. Why did they win that game against Chicago? I fully believe it was off of the momentum that they had off of those prior 4 games, and they brought that into Chicago and had that all on their back. So say now 2 weeks have to go by, you don't play Nick Foles, you don't play a lot of your starters. That momentum is out the window. Something that you've built up. Practice makes perfect, repetition makes perfect. Now you have 2 guys that are 2 weeks off of the last time that they played. I don't believe that it's going to help the overall efficiency and the effectiveness of how these guys play. I just think it's going to be a step back.
Poor Jacksonville. Nick Foles is the human form of momentum. I mean, you pull Nick Foles out, I don't know, he might get back into that funk,
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's so many different outliers. Just look at the MLB. They don't do that towards the end of the year. They expand the rosters and help teams finish out the season. They expand from 23 to 40 guys. I think that's an excellent idea. If you want to do something like that, like the last 3 weeks of the season, you can dress all 53 instead of just 46. I think that's an idea to look into, especially in those weeks when you're sitting your starters. At least have them dressed just in case something happens, something out of the blue comes up. I don't know. I just think anything other than this proposed idea would be better.
Yeah, I think this definitely hurts the fans. I think this very much helps the owners. Then there's the players right here in the middle, and we're kind of relying on them to make sure a rule that I think is terrible kind of gets slapped down. So I'm on Team NFLPA right now, really hoping that this doesn't become a thing. Because once again, you could tell with everything me and Gino just talked about, I think there is definitely more cons than there are pros to this rule change. I'm happy with 16 games. I don't need another 2 games for me to be satisfied. And look, if you're going to do it, once again, I need the star power. That's what gravitates people. It's not Nate Sudfeld. We're all Philadelphia Eagles guys here, but I mean, how much of Nate Sudfeld and all these backups do we want to watch? We get sick of preseason pretty quick, but very interesting conversation. We'll keep an eye on that as things develop. So make sure, for more, on that, follow us on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at DiBiase LOE, and at Gino_LOE. All right, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll get into some of these fun in the clutch questions. We're going to start off coming up. Down 4, the Eagles are with 3 seconds left at the opposing 20-yard line. Who is Carson Wentz throwing to try to get a touchdown to get the W? That's coming up right here on Locked On Eagles. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Louis DiBiase and Gino Camilleri rounding up the week here on this Friday edition of the podcast, July 12th. Hey, 12 more days until the Eagles officially get to NovaCare Complex for the 2019 training camp. Very excited. We finally get some real football to talk about in just a few days here. We got a week and then 5 more days right after that. I got a fun way to get us through it though today, Gino. So as I teased at the end of the first segment, we're going to go in the clutch here. Look, the Eagles, they are no stranger to the big moments. All these players the past 2 years, you go from let's start in 2017. Week 3 against the Giants, the 61-yard game winner from Jake Elliott. You go to the LA game against the Rams that pretty much clinched home field advantage, which ended up helping them win a Super Bowl. The goal line stand against Atlanta, the Super Bowl, of course, and then everything last year against the Texans, Week 16, the double doink against the Bears. The Eagles have been no stranger to the big moment the past few years. Want to go into an individual look at this. And again, this was from a fun Eagles fan account on Instagram that posed this question that I wanted to talk about with you. Again, down 4 with 3 seconds left. You're at the opposing 20, Gino. Carson Wentz, you're out there, empty set. You can have anybody you want out there. Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, Deshaun Jackson, Nelson Aguilar, Dallas Goedert, or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Who are you going to?
Well, you mentioned empty set, but if you didn't mention that, I was going to say Carson definitely isn't throwing to Wendell Smallwood because we saw that last year. We saw that right in the in the red zone, wide open on 3rd down, and he did not go there. But just hearing those names out loud is that's got to tickle your fancy a little bit, Eagles fans, knowing that you have those 5, 6, 7 options that you can throw to down in the red zone. But I think you have to go with Zach Ertz just based off of what he did in the Super Bowl and what he did in 2017 in the regular season in 2018 and the overall connection he has with Carson Wentz. I just think his ability in contested catch situations, although they have a great one in Alshon Jeffrey and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Zach Ertz is the guy who I want lined up on either a safety or a linebacker to get out in space. He's going to beat him down the line. He's going to play physical at the top of the stem and get up there in a contested catch situation and come down with the football.
I think this was an interesting question because there's, again, we've hit on it all the time with the Eagles offense. There is every single niche role that a receiver, every strength you could have. The Eagles have that here. You need a big body. You need the great route runners, the great hands. Like the Eagles have the deep threat, of course, Deshaun Jackson and Nelson Aguilar. Deshaun and Aguilar would need to separate really quickly for me because the thing is, I'm with you. It would be down to Alshon or Ertz for me, and then maybe Goddard or Arcega-Whiteside, just because those guys can not only separate at the line of scrimmage through leverage, using their body angles. Of course, those guys are just pristine route runners. Even JJ is a spitting image of Alshon Jeffrey coming out of Stanford, and Dallas Goedert, his comparisons coming out of South Dakota was Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce. So for me, I need a guy that can not only separate, but when the defense is going, 4 deep in the end zone, I need a guy like Alshon or Ertz that can just go up and get that football. And I'd probably end up going with Alshon. Look, him and Zach Ertz, they both have the clutch gene, but Alshon I go back to the Texans game, that third and long, the back of the end zone. Nick Foles just throws up a prayer across the middle, and with 3 guys draped all over him, Alshon Jeffrey comes down with that ball and saves the season. Or you just look at the touchdown in the Super Bowl against Eric Rowe, these jump balls we saw so consistently.
What about the one against the Cowboys?
Yeah.
When Carson threaded the needle, had like
That's
a
right.
17% chance according to Next Gen Stats, and he caught that ball basically with the tip of his fingers in triple coverage and was not scared for a second. Or the one against LA, the one that changed the course of the entire franchise. Carson Wentz on a bummed ACL, throwing it up, and Alshon Jeffrey catches it about 2.5 inches off the ground. The guy has done it before, even though he had the unfortunate drop against the Saints. I have no doubt that Alshon could get the job done again.
Yeah, and you look at him getting hot down the stretch last year against the Rams, against the Texans and the Redskins, and then even in the playoffs, like all these one-on-one, I mean, if you can get him one-on-one, I mean, it's pretty much over, and that's why I also considered JJ, because Gino, what was he known for most? What was he famous for? Like the one single,
dude, I saw it against Oregon. I know,
right? Just the box out.
You have to just pour salt in the wounds. He did it all season long on 14 touchdowns for Stanford. He embarrassed my Oregon Ducks in one of the worst comebacks in history in regards to the Oregon being on the back end of that one. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. This team has so many options. Lou, what are you going to do? Like you said, you're down in the red zone, you're on the 20, let's say. You go empty set. You have to double cover one of those guys. It's just inevitable. I believe that Zach Ertz will command the bracket.
I agree.
That's the only way you can stop him in space. I mean, keep him in front of you, basically. Now you leave open J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in one-on-one. You leave Dallas Goedert one-on-one. You leave Nelson Aguilar or Deshaun Jackson one-on-one. But the one thing to remember is you have one of the best man-beating wide receivers in the NFL in Alshon Jeffrey. It's going to be such a pick-your-poison type thing for these opposing defenses. All of these guys are going to be in that scenario at one point or another, and I believe all of them can win in many different facets. Dallas Goedert is going to win on his athleticism and strength throughout the route stem. Zach Ertz is going to beat you on his clean route running and get into space and beat you on a contested catch. Alshon Jeffrey, he's going to bully you the entire way through the route. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, he's going to get open off his smooth feet off the line and his ability to box you out. Nelson Aguilar and Deshaun Jackson will beat you on pure shiftiness. Pick your poison, NFL defensive coordinators, because you're going to be in these scenarios where you're going to find Deshaun Jackson line up on a linebacker one way or another throughout the season. You're going to see Alshon Jeffrey on a safety. You're going to see all sorts of mismatches, and it's something that they're going to have to be able to come out and be proactive in the red zone addressing these scenarios. So, hey, when you are down in that scenario, you're not just taking the one guy that everybody knows that you're going to go to. You're going to force feed it to Zach Ertz. No, now you have the ability to force a defense to make you beat one-on-one scenarios, and all of those guys I mentioned, I truly have seen and believe that they are going to win man situations time and time again. Not just in the red zone, but through the 20s as well.
Yeah, it's a fun topic for sure. Honestly, I mean, if I'm going empty set here in this scenario where I got to score a touchdown as time's expiring and I can have 5 guys out there, I would almost probably put Deshaun on the bench.
That's the thing. Who's going to beat him off a lot? We're just picking. We're arguing over little things here. This is such an inconvenience to this team that they have 7 great pass catching options. That's such a burden to have. But no, it's who do you believe can win those scenarios? It's going to be a lot into the matchups. Can Nelson Aguilar do something against a particular cornerback that Deshaun maybe couldn't? I believe Deshaun is going to get off the line easier. I think he's got that straight line speed and that agility that is just a next level over Nelson. But hey, any of those names that you mentioned, Lou, this isn't 2016 when there's only one guy that I want catching the ball, and that's Zach Ertz, because Nelson Aguilar, number 17, had the drops. DGB couldn't catch basically anything. Bryce Treggs was the only one that could get down the field, and he only did that a couple times throughout the year. And Josh Huff, hey, he was arrested halfway through the year. So they didn't really have much. Now you're in a scenario where any of those names that you might – yeah, exactly, right? Now you're in a scenario that you are far removed from that situation. Any of those guys, Doug Peterson is going to have 100% trust in to go out and make a play in that scenario. And the great thing is – it's not just them. You now have 3 to 4 running backs behind you that all are going to be able to catch the football out of the backfield. As much as you don't want to believe Jordan Howard can catch the football out of the backfield, even though that's not his specialty, so can Miles Sanders, so can Boston Scott, and so can Corey Clement. You have 11 guys that can catch the football realistically on any down. Good luck to these defensive coordinators. I cannot wait to just see these mismatches that are created throughout the year.
So Gino goes with Zach Ertz here. I go with Alshon Jeffrey. I love Alshon's body control, like along the sideline, like one-on-one at the catch point. It's just, it's magic there. I think.
But just wait until you see J.J. Arcega-Whiteside go up and box out Josh Norman, and you're going to be like, hey, maybe we should be giving him the ball in the red zone because
that's why he was my third option, to be honest. Like he was the third guy I was thinking of over anybody else.
His ability is just truly remarkable for a guy that doesn't really – his athletic ability isn't off the charts. He just finds a way to get open. And who better to give him the football than Carson Wentz, a guy we've seen time and time again put it in some of the most unbelievably tight windows. We mentioned the Alshon Jeffrey catch against Dallas into triple coverage, the ball to Corey Clement while he's running, the one play last year where his hand's getting tipped and he's coming across his body and he makes a throw down the middle of the field while he has a man on the football and puts it on a line to his wide receiver. Lou, I can't wait, man. Like just talking about these situations and these scenarios that we're going to see, they're going to play out and we're going to see them. And that's the great thing about it.
All right, I got one more question for you, and then we'll hit the break, and we got one more after that. You need a game-ending interception. You're up by 2 here. A team's driving on you. They can only – all they need is a field goal here to win the game. You need one guy to come away with a steal of an interception.
Oh, my gosh.
Who's it going to be out of – This is tough because you got 6 corners here you could choose from. Also, Malcolm Jenkins, Roddy McLeod. Let's see, what's your pick here?
Man, you're making this really freaking difficult on me.
You want me to go first? Because I think you know who I'm going with.
Yeah, I know who you're going to say. Just get it out of the way.
Zool, baby. Zool's like, that's his niche role. He's the playmaker. He's the guy that can come up with that play. Even if it's like a jump ball, he's the lengthiest, biggest corner there is. The best route, for me, best at reading, the play breaking down in zone coverage. The numbers speak for himself. The guy's had 5 interceptions. He could have 7 to 9. And he hasn't even played a full season yet in 2 years. For me, it's Rasul, and he's done it in like big situations. Week 1 against Atlanta, the guy plays this first snap of the game, coming in for Ronald Darby, covering Julio Jones in the 4th quarter, and he comes away with an interception. I'm going with Douglas.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I'm really up in the air here. I would love to say Sid, just based off of what I saw at Washington and what I believe he can be as a lockdown. He's got to
turn around, though, man.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's what I've seen. Now he has to deliver. This is going to be a huge season for him. But if I were to go right now with what I've seen throughout the careers of all these defensive backs, I have to go Malcolm Jenkins because, one, I know that Jim Schwartz is going to put Malcolm on whoever they know that ball is going to go to in that situation, whether it be a one-on-one against a slot receiver or tight end, or if he's in bracket coverage with a cornerback on a guy like Julio Jones or Michael Thomas. I believe that Malcolm Jenkins is going to be around the football a lot because he's a guy that wants to get paid, deserves to get paid, and he truly wants to show this Eagles organization that he deserves every ounce of the contract, every ounce and every reason to be a top 5 paid safety in football. And he's going to make big plays this year, Lou. I can't wait to see what he does. He's done it time and time again. He's going to be around the football. He's made great interceptions every single year that he's been with Philadelphia. Even with the Saints, when he was there, he made unbelievable plays, and that goes into his background as a cornerback. He has the ability to be around the football at any given time, and the way the Eagles use him in matchup situations, whether it's based defending a running back out of the backfield, defending a tight end, a slot receiver, an outside receiver, he's been there, done that. I believe he's going to be around the ball in big-time situations, and he's going to come away with a game-changing interception because you know what, Lou? This Eagles team is due from 2018 after not a lot of things going their way in the beginning of the year. I think they're finally due to get some bounces going their way.
Yeah, I mean, Jenkins is used to doing that, too. I mean, huge moments. 2015 against the Patriots. I mean, the 99-yard interception return. I mean, the guy has been the playmaker. And for me, I would go with Rasul, but if I had to go with someone that's probably going to start, and I don't see Douglas being a starting corner this year unless injuries happen, it would probably be in the secondary in general. At safety, too, it would be Malcolm. I think Avonte Maddox would maybe be second, right? Because, I mean, Darby's a guy that he has a knack for turnovers, but I don't know. I saw Avonte Maddox last year making some big-time plays on the football. Avonte, he reminds me so much of Malcolm Jenkins that he might be my other choice from the corners here, honestly. So
I agree.
I think definitely not Mills. I wouldn't say – I mean, Cravion, though, too. Cravion had a great interception on Drew Brees in the playoffs. But for me, again, in a clutch moment, I trust Rasul Douglas more than anybody. The guy had 15 interceptions in his final 2 years at West Virginia on top of
first play of the season, he picked off Matt Ryan. You can't deny his playmaking ability.
Yeah, I mean, that's his niche role here for sure in the secondary. I mean, he's actually got a bunch of them. And we'll get into that. Don't worry. The CB Wars podcast is finally coming up this week now that I'm fully recovered from the surgery. Me and Gino are going to have a fun time doing that as training camp comes around the corner. All right, we'll take one final break here. I got one more question for you guys to sit on as you listen to these commercials. Game-clinching sack. Who do you want? I think this one, I don't know, it could be obvious, but they got some talent up front of the defensive line, so we'll get into it next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
There's no off-season for the true fan, and the Locked On Podcast Network is here for you with your team every day. Your favorite team's local expert will continue to give you the inside scoop on your team. 2 amazing NFL draft shows, Locked On NFL Draft and The Draft Dudes, will bring you the latest on the draft. And Locked On NFL is still rolling, hitting all the hot topics and player moves. There's no off-season for a true fan. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Gino, we are wrapping up the show. One last question for you here in the clutch. You need a game-clinching sack. Who do you want? I mean, the dude, the guy that I'm thinking of made the biggest play in Eagles history. But look, you got Derek Barnett on the edge. You got Fletcher Cox in the middle. You got Malik Jackson, who's made a couple big plays, including some big ones in the Super Bowl against the Panthers. You got, of course, Brandon Graham, Vinny Curry. You need one sack here with the season on the line. Who's it going to be?
Fletcher Cox.
Fletcher Cox, okay.
End of discussion. The guy had 10.5 sacks last year. I mentioned this on yesterday's show. He's only going to improve with the defensive line rotation that they have there because now you're going to have that depth ability. You weren't able to take Fletch off the field as much as you wanted to last year with the injuries that piled up at that position. Tim Jernigan going out early in the year really hurt Fletcher Cox, I believe. And to say it really hurt him and then he comes away with a career high in sacks is just, it's an asinine statement to even make because the guy's the second best defensive tackle in football. And I mentioned it yesterday. He just has the pure ability to pick up a guy at will to move him from point A to point B, whether it be in a single or double team on any type of block, he is going to get there. If you would have asked me this question last year, I would have went with Michael Bennett any day of the week because he did just that against the Saints in that one play when they needed a sack, they needed to play on the football. Who better than to toss Michael Bennett inside, use his athletic ability to beat those less athletic guards, and he did just that. But now Fletcher Cox, man, another year into this contract with a better, maybe one of the best defensive lines in Eagles history, hopefully one of the best defensive lines in Eagles history, fingers crossed. I only think there's room to improve for Fletcher Cox. I want him in the game. I want him lined up in a 1 or 2 or 3 tech, bull rush the guard, just make the quarterback go crazy. Malik Jackson maybe come to clean up the scraps, or Fletcher Cox just comes away with a strip sack and the game's over. But I truly believe that Fletcher Cox is just going to make himself known as the second best defensive tackle in football this year.
Yeah, you look at the game last year in Dallas where he had to get Prescott out of field goal range in order to send that game into overtime, and he comes through up the middle and takes him down. He's made some big plays in big moments for sure. For me, I got to go with Mr. Strip Sack himself, Brandon Graham, taking down Tom Brady to win the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about it tomorrow.
But would you rush him from the inside or would you rush him from the outside?
Ooh,
that's another question that you have to add there.
Regardless, I'm taking BG. Even last year, there was a video I tweeted out. So I was watching, just again, I don't know why I was doing it to myself, but I was rewatching the Eagles-Saints divisional round game, and Brandon Graham came away with a strip sack on Drew Brees that the Eagles nearly recovered that would have put them in prime position to be up 21-0. Like, he just, big moment after big moment. I mean, that guy, when he's healthy, shows through, and last year when he finally got healthy, he was really turning it up, and for me, I mean, he's proven in big moments that he'll make the play. So I went back and forth with him and Fletcher Cox. I like that you mentioned Michael Bennett, because if he was with the team still, like he showed in clutch moments last year, he could come away with a big sack as well. But I'll go with BG. Gino goes with Fletcher Cox. I go with Rasul Douglas for game-ending interception. He goes with Malcolm Jenkins. And then, look, if you need a touchdown down 4 as time's expiring, I got my man Alshon Jeffrey, and he's got Zach Ertz. I thought it was a fun podcast today, Gino. I'm glad to be back, and we hope everyone out there enjoyed the show and enjoyed this week's set of shows. If you missed any of the ones Gino did throughout the week, you can follow us on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at DiBiase or at Gino_LOE. You can follow us on our website at LockedOnEagles.com, and also on any podcast platform out there. Just tell Siri or Alexa to play Locked On Eagles as you're driving to work or on your desktop, on your phone. Doesn't matter. During your workout, we will be in your ear talking birds. Gino, thanks for coming on the show again, man, today. Good to be back, and any final thoughts?
No, it's good that we're back. We're almost a year into this thing together, Lou.
That's right.
It's crazy how time flies. I just think we keep getting better and better each show. It's good not to just talk into a microphone to myself. Glad to have you back, and we're less than a month away from some preseason football. I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever been more excited to watch preseason football than I am for this upcoming 2019 season.
Yeah, I'm anticipating this season. So, I mean, last year I did, of course, coming off the Super Bowl win, but I'm so excited for this 2019 season for just so many reasons, and can't wait to get into more. We're going to cover, look, we got you covered throughout all of training camp, throughout the preseason, and then, look, if you guys were with us throughout the regular season last year, you know what's coming, and I think we're in for some good things in 2019. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for listening, and let's go Birds, baby.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Thanks for listening to today's Locked On podcast. Want to remind you, your smart speaker can play a Locked On podcast. Just tell your smart speaker, play podcast, and the name of your podcast. I could show you exactly how right now, but then Alexa or Google's likely to do it. So I'll just explain. Say, whoever you're talking to, or whatever you're talking to, play podcast Locked On blank. Have a great day.